Superman has always been the symbol of hope. So why did Zack Snyder's version leave audiences questioning him instead? Both start with the same boy from Kansas who grows into Earth's protector. But while one inspired, the other divided fans, sparking debates, memes, and endless controversy. So what really sets these two Supermen apart? Let's find out. Zack Snyder's dark vision. Zack Snyder set out to build a superhero universe that felt dark, heavy, and uncompromisingly realistic. A vision he believed would stand apart from the competition. In many ways, he succeeded, but not always in the way audiences expected. Following the massive success of the Dark Knight trilogy, Warner Bros. Was eager to expand Batman's story into a larger shared universe, even considering the possibility of a Superman film within Nolan's continuity. But Christopher Nolan declined. He turned down both a potential fourth Batman movie and the idea of building a Marvel-style universe around his films. That left the studio with a choice: either find someone new to carry the torch, or risk losing ground to Marvel's rapidly growing empire. Nolan remained involved as a producer, but handed the director's chair to Zack Snyder. And with that decision, the tone of DC's new cinematic universe was set. A Superman unlike any other. Snyder's Superman was nothing like the classic image audiences had grown up with. Gone were the bright colors and hopeful optimism. In their place were muted palettes, a heavier tone, and a Superman wrestling with questions of identity and morality. It was a bold departure, one that immediately divided fans. Yet even critics agreed on one thing: Zack Snyder had made one of the best casting choices in superhero history. Henry Cavill as Superman simply worked. From the moment he appeared on screen, Cavill looked and felt like the character. His towering frame, near-mythic features, and commanding presence gave audiences the sense they weren't just watching an actor, they were seeing Superman brought to life. No one argued with the casting. The real debate came later: the divide. Because when it comes to superheroes, casting is only part of the equation. What really matters is relatability. If audiences can't connect to the world on screen, they won't care. And it's here that Snyder's Superman split opinion. To some, his darker, conflicted portrayal made the character feel more human, a god brought down to earth. To others, it stripped away the very thing that made him iconic: his ability to inspire. That divide, born from the clash between Snyder's vision and the studio's demands, would go on to define the DC cinematic universe itself. Tone: light versus dark. One of the most frequent criticisms of Zack Snyder's DC universe was its tone. His world was drenched in shadows, and for many fans, it was jarring. After all, Christopher Reeve had once embodied Superman as bright, optimistic, and endlessly inspiring. Snyder's version was the sharpest possible contrast, with muted colors, conflicted morality, and an atmosphere closer to tragedy than triumph. Yet Snyder never set out to make his hero hopeless. He still framed Superman as a figure of awe and inspiration, only filtered through realism. His argument was bold: if someone like Superman appeared in our world, humanity itself would be forced to rethink everything. But here's where the divide began. For critics, the darker tone paired with explosive battles and extreme collateral damage didn't feel profound. It felt excessive, even insensitive. Those collapsing towers weren't just a spectacle. They looked like echoes of real-world trauma, with lives lost in the chaos. The clash of visions. At its heart, the conflict came down to what people wanted Superman to be. Snyder approached him as a philosophical dilemma, a god among men whose very existence shakes the foundations of society. However, many audiences didn't want Superman as a question mark. They wanted him as an answer, a beacon of hope and justice wrapped in bright primary colors. That's precisely where James Gunn's vision steps in. Gunn has been clear that his Superman won't be modernized through cynicism, but revitalized through his essence: hope, kindness, and compassion. Snyder asked, how would our world respond to Superman? Gunn flips the perspective. How does Superman respond to our world? And the difference is profound. Gunn promises a hero who radiates humanity, not despair, someone who can guide audiences out of the darkness rather than sink into it. In a world already weighed down by cynicism, this shift feels less like nostalgia and more like necessity. Krypton and Heritage. James Gunn's Superman avoids retelling the classic origin story. There are no opening scenes of Krypton's downfall, no rocket carrying baby Kal-El across the stars. Instead, his Kryptonian heritage surfaces only briefly through a holographic message from his parents, Jor-El and Lara. Gunn's focus is on who Clark is now, not where he came from. This Superman already understands he isn't alone. He has Krypto, the superdog, at his fortress, and by the film's end, he is joined by his cousin, Supergirl. His world is about connection, not isolation. By contrast, Zack Snyder's Man of Steel devotes a major portion of its runtime to Krypton. His vision of the planet is lavish and detailed, but also deeply flawed. We see political conflict, environmental collapse, and Jor-El fighting desperately against the Council, even clashing with General Zod before Krypton is consumed. For Henry Cavill's Superman, this heritage is something uncovered later, reinforcing his isolation until Zod and the surviving Kryptonians arrive. Snyder's Kal-El doesn't begin surrounded by family or hope, but by the weight of a doomed world. Hype moments and aura. The term aura has gone viral online, describing someone who looks powerful and impressive, but doesn't necessarily do the right thing. For many fans, this perfectly sums up Snyder's Superman. The viral comparisons make the contrast clear. In James Gunn's version, Superman stops a monster before it can smash into a building full of people, prioritizing civilian safety. In Snyder's version, Superman battles the world engine, a machine whose energy weakens him, while Metropolis crumbles around him. Civilians are crushed in collapsing buildings as Superman focuses on the machine instead of the people. Yes, Snyder's Clark is still young and barely in control of his powers, but the impression left behind is damning. A Superman who doesn't prioritize saving lives, leaving destruction in his wake. Jonathan Kent's shadow. The criticism deepens when you look at Snyder's portrayal of Jonathan Kent. In Man of Steel, young Clark saves a school bus full of kids from drowning. But instead of praise, Jonathan suggests he should have let them die rather than risk exposure. Later, Jonathan sacrifices himself during a tornado, refusing Clark's help even though Clark could have saved him instantly. The lesson is clear: don't reveal yourself, no matter the cost. For critics, this moment crystallizes Snyder's flaw. Instead of Jonathan teaching responsibility, he teaches fear. And that fear shapes Clark into a hero more concerned with secrecy than service. Aura farming at its worst. One of the most infamous examples comes in Batman vs. Superman. A bomb explodes inside the Capitol, killing countless civilians. And Superman? He stands frozen in the smoke, framed in a dramatic pose. It looks less like a rescue and more like a photo op. The contrast with Gunn's Superman couldn't be sharper. Gunn's hero saves a woman trapped under rubble, steadies a collapsing building, and even takes a moment to rescue a squirrel. Small, human acts that show compassion, not aura, but humanity. And Snyder's handling raises an even bigger question. In Justice League, Superman is fast enough to track the Flash mid-run, match his speed, and even anticipate his movements. If he can perceive the world at that level, how could he not save even a single person in that courtroom explosion? Snyder's fault. One of the clearest examples of Zack Snyder's struggle with Superman's character comes in Batman vs. Superman. Lex Luthor kidnaps Martha Kent and delivers an ultimatum: bring him Batman's head within the hour, or she dies. It is the kind of moral crisis that should highlight Superman's greatest strength, his ability to inspire, to rise above fear and hatred, to find another way when no one else can. But instead of radiating hope or clarity, Snyder's Superman responds with one of his most infamous moments. He flies straight to Lois, confesses the impossible choice before him, and delivers a line that has haunted fans ever since. Not the words of an unshakable hero, but of a man broken by manipulation. For critics, this scene doesn't just weaken Superman, it strips him of the very core that made the character timeless, the ability to lead with hope, even when the world feels hopeless. In a single moment, the world's greatest hero abandons his core principle, framing murder as a legitimate option. And instead of offering reassurance or resolve, he follows it with another grim declaration: no one stays good in this world. For Superman, a character built on the idea that goodness endures no matter the cost, this line felt like a betrayal. What should have been a test of his compassion became a surrender to despair. To many fans, this wasn't Superman at all. It was the clearest sign of Snyder's flaw, a hero stripped of hope and reduced to a cynical reflection of the world around him, rather than the light that rises above it. Rather than inspiring, this Superman buckles under pressure. When he finally confronts Batman, he doesn't try to reason with him. He lashes out, hurling him across the city before even explaining why he's there. From Batman's perspective, why would he ever believe that this godlike figure had come to talk? What follows isn't a clash of ideals, but a brutal brawl filled with kryptonite weapons, shattered buildings, and the infamous Save Martha scene. For many, it was the breaking point. This wasn't the Superman they grew up with, and it's not Henry Cavill's fault. He looked the part, carried the presence, and gave the role everything he could. The problem was the writing. Snyder's script turned Superman into a moody, indestructible figure who faced no real consequences and, more importantly, lacked the hope that defines him. Snyder's Superman may look like the hero, but he never feels like him. Snyder's Superman was built for a universe that collapsed under its own weight, heavy, brooding, and difficult to embrace. James Gunn isn't chasing that shadow. His Superman is restoring what made the character endure for generations: heart, hope, and humanity. And that's why, this time, we won't just see Superman on screen. We'll feel him. We'll remember why we ever believed a man could fly.